Okay, let's be real for a sec. You're probably hearing a ton about AI these days, everywhere you turn, right? But is it all it's cracked up to be? Or is this like a giant AI bubble about to burst?
That's the big question, isn't it?
That's what we're going to dive into today. We've got two really interesting articles to help us out here.
Yeah.
One from Futurism and one from CNN Business, both from this past summer. And one thing that really jumped out from both of them is this crazy gap between all the money going into AI and like the actual profits coming out. Investors are starting to sweat a little.
Yeah, well, you can kind of see why when you look at how much is being spent. It's staggering.
Right. It's not just like a few $1,000,000. We're talking billions being pumped into what they call like AI infrastructure. What does that even mean?
So it's not just some like abstract idea, it's the actual nuts and bolts of AI. Think like massive data centers to store all the information, specialized chips to process it all, and of course all the brains behind it, the engineers, the researchers.
Gotcha. So like the physical stuff and the people power.
Exactly. And just to give you an idea of the scale, Google alone, they're projected to spend over $49 billion this year on this stuff. A huge chunk of that is going straight to AI.
49 billion from just Google. Whoa. Okay, but are we seeing any return on all this? Like, where's the beef?
Well, that's the $1,000,000 question, isn't it? We're seeing some really cool AI products popping up for sure, but the path to actually making money from them, it's still pretty fuzzy for a lot of companies.
Fuzzy, huh?
Yeah.
Got any examples?
Well, take OpenAI, the folks behind ChatGPT. Everyone knows ChatGPT, right? It's captured the public's imagination. But get this. They're projected to lose a whopping $5 billion this year.
$5 billion. That's wild. Makes you wonder what they see that we don't.
And there's even talk that they might totally run out of cash within the next year.
Yikes. Okay, so it sounds like this isn't just a like one-off thing. Wall Street's starting to get a little nervous about the whole AI scene.
Right. You're definitely seeing more and more skepticism from investors and analysts.
Like, how skeptical are we talking?
Well, one analyst, Jim Covello from Goldman Sachs, put it pretty bluntly. He said, overbuilding things the world doesn't have use for or is not ready for typically ends badly.
Oof. Not exactly sugarcoating it, huh?
No. And his words really do echo this growing sense of unease. It's all starting to feel a little familiar, isn't it?
You mean like dot-com bubble 2.0?
It's hard not to draw parallels, right? All that frenzy around internet companies back then, tons of cash being thrown around, and then boom, a whole lot of people lost a whole lot of money.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if we're setting ourselves up for the same thing with AI. Like, are we just getting ahead of ourselves?
Well, one tech analyst, Richard Windsor, he's been saying we've seen this pattern multiple times now. The internet bubble in '99, the autonomous driving bubble in 2017, and now generative AI in 2024.
It's like every few years we get swept up in the next big thing, pump a ton of money into it, and then sometimes it just goes poof.
It definitely makes you think, doesn't it? And the question is, are we seeing the same thing play out here with AI?
So if that's the case, like, where do we go from here? If everybody's saying, hey, be careful, this might be a bubble, but these companies are saying, no, AI is the future, trust us, it's worth the investment. Who do we believe? How do we, like, cut through all the noise?
Yeah, that's the tricky part, isn't it? It's a bit of a mixed bag right now.
Okay, so how do we sort through this mixed bag? What do we need to know to, like, actually understand what's going on?
Well, on the one hand, you have folks like Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, right? He's arguing that the real danger isn't overspending on AI, it's underinvesting.
So they're saying that, like, missing out on AI's potential is a bigger risk than maybe wasting some money in the short term.
Exactly. They're playing the long game.
But how long is this long game? Like, how long are we talking till these investments actually start paying off?
Well, Microsoft's CFO, Amy Hood, she's indicated that they expect their AI investments to drive profits for the next 15 years and beyond.
15 years and beyond. That's a pretty long vision.
It is. And Meta CFO Susan Lai, she's been even more cautious. She said they don't even expect generative AI to contribute significantly to revenue in 2024. So it seems like we're still in the very, very early stages here.
Okay, so patience is key, even when billions are on the line. But are investors really willing to wait that long? I mean, some of us are kind of itching to see what AI can really do,
Right.
But based on what we've heard so far, it sounds like there's a pretty big disconnect between all this hype and, like, the tangible results.
It's definitely a complex picture. And there are folks who argue that developing AI isn't about getting rich quick. It's about laying the groundwork for a future where AI is woven into like every aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
They're saying the question isn't if AI will be profitable, but when and how W.
Okay, so is it just a matter of trusting the process? Like, sit back, relax, and wait for the AI revolution to happen?
Well, it's not that simple. For example, analysts at Barclays predict that something like $60 billion will be spent annually on developing AI models. They say that's enough to create 12,000 products on par with ChatGPT.
Hold on, 12,000 ChatGPTs. That's a lot. Do we even need that many? And more importantly, would they actually make any money? It all feels a bit like, the Wild West of tech. We have these incredible tools, but we're still figuring out how to use them effectively.
Yeah, and that's a good point. How do we know we're not just creating a bunch of stuff nobody needs?
Right. And how do we separate the real players from the ones just, like, riding the hype wave?
Exactly. It's like AI is clearly changing the game, but we're still in the very early innings. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of potential pitfalls, and of course, the potential for incredible breakthroughs.
And speaking of potential pitfalls, let's talk about Tesla for a minute.
Ah, yes. The poster child for AI hype.
Right. Their full self-driving feature. They've been promising it's revolutionary since, like, 2015, but it's still not fully baked.
It's a classic example of how the excitement around AI can sometimes get ahead of reality.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that developing AI often takes way longer than we think it will, and achieving true AI capabilities is incredibly complex.
And, it really highlights a key challenge with AI, bridging that gap between ambition and reality. It's a reminder that while the potential is huge, the journey will be long and complex.
It's fascinating how a story like Tesla's can bring us right back to the heart of our deep dive. So to recap, we have billions being invested, investors are getting a little nervous, and a technology that, while incredibly promising, is still very much in its developmental stages. It's a recipe for both excitement and anxiety, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, and that's why it's so important to be informed and understand the nuances of this landscape. We need to cut through the hype and the fear to get a clear picture of what's really going on.
Which is exactly what we're trying to do here today. So before we wrap up this first part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with a thought. Imagine, just for a moment, that AI does become hugely profitable in the next few years. What industries would be most impacted? And how might your own life change as a result?
Welcome back to our deep dive into this whole AI bubble thing.
Before the break, we were talking about Tesla and their self-driving thing. It just really shows how sometimes we get so caught up in what AI could do that we forget about how hard it actually is to make it happen.
Right. It's a good example of something both our articles talk about. People kind of underestimate how tough it is to build AI that actually works, reliably and all that.
Yeah, it's tempting to get all excited about the possibilities, but actually getting there is messy and expensive and takes forever.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the big question we're trying to answer here. Is there really an AI bubble? And what does that even mean in this context?
It's not just about whether AI is overhyped. We also need to think about what happens if all this excitement doesn't lead to actual money.
Yeah.
What's the economic fallout?
Right. A bubble is basically about expectations and investments that are way too high, and nobody can keep up with that. AI definitely has potential, but are investors throwing money at companies that might never actually deliver?
And then what? We end up with another .com crash, companies going bankrupt and people losing their shirts.
That's the worry. And it's not just Wall Street that would feel the hit. It could affect jobs, innovation, our everyday lives.
Okay, so how do we figure out what's real and what's not? How do we make smart decisions about AI when everything feels so uncertain?
Well, I think one thing is to be super critical of, all the information that's coming at us. Don't just believe the headlines, dig a little deeper. What are the assumptions? Is there any real evidence?
Right. And we have to remember AI isn't just one thing. It's a whole bunch of different technologies.
Right.
And they all have their own, challenges and opportunities.
Exactly. We can't lump everything together. It's important to see the difference between the hype around specific AI applications and the more fundamental changes happening in things like machine learning and data analysis.
Because those core changes could totally revolutionize industries. Healthcare, finance, transportation.
Yeah.
That's going to happen regardless of whether the latest chatbot is all it's cracked up to be.
Right. It's about looking past the flashy stuff and seeing the bigger picture, how AI is really evolving.
And understanding both the good and the bad, the potential benefits and the potential risks, so we can make informed decisions.
And as we move towards a future where AI is everywhere, Being able to think critically and separate fact from fiction is going to be more and more important.
It's like we need to develop like AI literacy alongside the technology itself.
I totally agree. In the end, AI is just a tool. And just like any tool, its impact depends on us, how we choose to use it.
And that choice, that responsibility, it's on us. But to make good choices, we need the full picture. So let's talk about some of the good stuff. We focused a lot on the risks, but these articles also talk about some pretty amazing things AI could do.
Oh, for sure. One area where AI is already making a difference is healthcare. It can analyze medical images, helping doctors find things like cancer earlier and more accurately. And there are AI systems being developed to personalize treatment plans based on your genes.
That's incredible. Like AI could totally change how we think about healthcare. What about other areas?
Well, in finance, AI is being used to spot fraud, assess credit risk, and even give personalized financial advice. And in transportation, we're seeing AI in everything from self-driving cars, even though there are some bumps in the road, like we talked about with Tesla, to like making traffic flow better in cities. There's so much potential.
It's pretty mind-blowing. But going back to what we were talking about before, how do we make sure all this potential is used responsibly and ethically?
That's the big question. It's going to take a lot of collaboration, researchers, policymakers, businesses, individuals all working together to create a framework for AI development that prioritizes safety, fairness, transparency. We have to have those tough conversations now to make sure we're using this powerful technology for good.
It's good. We need to be proactive,
Yeah.
Shape the future of AI instead of just letting it happen to us.
Exactly. And that brings us back to AI literacy. The more people understand about AI, what it can do, what it can't do, the better decisions we can make about its role in our lives and in society.
So to wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's recap. We've looked at the risks of an AI bubble, but we've also seen the amazing things AI could do. We talked about critical thinking, understanding AI, and being proactive in shaping its future. Welcome back. So we've covered a lot of ground, right? Investments, expectations, and that whole question of a bubble.
It's interesting, though, even with all that uncertainty, everybody seems to agree on one thing. AI is here to stay. The real question isn't if it's going to change things, it's how, and when.
So let's talk about what you, the listener, can do to get ready for this AI future, because it's not just about being tech savvy anymore. This is about like the future of work, the economy, our everyday lives.
Yeah, if I think about the bigger picture, understanding AI is becoming as important as knowing how to use a computer was like a generation ago.
Right, like it's a basic skill now.
Exactly. It's about being able to look at all these claims about AI and think critically. What are the limitations? Where are the opportunities?
Our articles kind of touch on this, but they don't really give any practical advice. So let's get down to brass tacks.
Yeah.
What can people actually do to get more AI savvy?
Well, first off, just jump in and play around. There are so many free AI tools online. Image generators, language models, all sorts of stuff. It's the best way to get a feel for what AI can do and, maybe even more importantly, what it can't do.
Hands-on experience is always the best teacher, right? You see the real deal, not just the marketing hype.
Exactly. And don't just passively take in all this AI-generated content. Think about how it's made, what biases are built in, how could it be manipulated?
Right, because the more sophisticated AI gets, the easier it is to make those deep fakes, spread misinformation, even write entire articles or scripts that sound like a human did them.
Which brings up a whole other question about the ethics of AI, something we could definitely dive into another time. But for now, the main thing is develop your AI BS detector.
Love that. So experiment, think critically. What else?
Well, if you're feeling really ambitious, try learning some basic coding. Even a little bit of programming can help you understand how AI actually works under the hood.
And there are tons of resources for that online, right?
Oh, yeah. Tons. Coursera, EDX, even YouTube. Lots of great courses on AI and machine learning. A lot of them are free or pretty cheap.
So learn by doing. Think critically. Maybe even learn some code. Any last words of wisdom for our listeners as they navigate this whole AI thing?
Stay curious, stay informed, and don't be afraid to ask questions. AI is a powerful tool, but it's up to us to decide how it's used and what kind of impact it has on the world.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive. We hope you've learned a thing or two about the world of AI, the potential risks and rewards, and most importantly, that you have a role to play in shaping this technological future. Thanks for joining us.